Yeah, so for the new guys here, so basically Blastfurnace, the idea of Blastfurnace is it's a meetup, interactive meetup. So bring your own device. Basically the breakdown of the event is we're going to do about a 45-minute session now on some technologies generally, and whether it be every week it's something different, whether it be a new program or existing, might just be a technology or framework, could be a bit of hardware that we're playing with. We'll have a break, we'll have some pizza and some drinks and network and have a chat, and another 45 minutes to continue finish off. That might be the point where we get hands-on in some of the months that we have. Tonight we're basically going to be hands-on from the start. As always, so a couple of sponsors. SIS, or Standard Middle School Partnership Program. So they actually give us a bit of money to help us get the pizzas and the drinks, and they also have connected us with Dashworks, who generously donate the space. So this month, we're doing a bit of a programmer's guide for Raspberry Pi. So the idea is, especially when I was starting to play with these things since about Raspberry Pi 1, I came from I guess an embedded land, like microcontrollers, like Arduino and things, to then wanting to program Raspberry Pi, realizing how different the two were, and it wasn't as easy as just plugging in the COM port and flashing some code to it, and even setting them up could be difficult. So what I wanted to do tonight is, after years of fiddling with them, take everyone through sort of my boilerplate setup for Pi that I find most useful when you're just trying to set it up to do particular things rather than use it as a desktop computer. So the first thing you have to do with the Raspberry Pi is image the SD card with some sort of operating system. I like to use DietPi. So for those of you who haven't heard of it, it's basically a really lightweight, like stripped out version, built on top of the Raspbian OS, but it has some really cool features and ways that you can set them up straight out of the box, especially setting them up headless and setting the Pis up with software packages that you generally use with them. So we've given out the Pis, but don't power them up yet because I'm going to show you how to flash them. I'm going to get you guys to follow along with me, but we won't do the flashing tonight just to save the bandwidth and download some other time. So what we've already done is flash the SD cards and the Pis that we have. But I'll take you through basically, this is essentially effectively what it looks like. So if you go into DietPi.com, you actually go to download, and it supports a heap of SBC, single board computers, or even installing it on VirtualBox if you want to run it on a desktop. It's actually a great place to go if you want to look for some alternatives to Raspberry Pi as well. And you see a whole bunch of them there. But we'll be using the Raspberry Pi. I like the Raspberry Pi because, I guess, of the support available. On top of that, the availability of the device itself, you can basically pick it up anywhere. So all we have to do is click on it, download the image. Now, the next thing to use, if you're actually flashing it yourself, the most reliable thing I've found lately is this great bit of software called etcher. So this is what I use to flash the SD cards on Windows. Works on Mac and Linux as well. And I find it works really good. No stuffing around. So the only downside with the DietPi, they say it was a 7Z5 in 7Z2. That's a pretty good one. I'll show that guy. So you download and install Ballerina Etcher, which once you run it looks something like this. Select your image, DietPi. It's already automatically selected the only device that on the flash and flash. So what we've done with the SD card before is we've basically already done the steps. So this is where we basically start from. So while we're waiting for that to happen, if you can pull the SD card out of Pi and connect them to your computer, whether you use the USB to SD card adapter or I don't know how to do it, or you plug it straight in. So what I'm going to demo once I flash this is with the DietPi OS, you can actually configure a lot before you even turn the Pi on, which is a massive pro to the image. One of the biggest challenges I definitely found when I was first playing with Pi, you flash it and then you need basically a screen and to even get started with it. And it seems trivial, but so many times, like the only screen in the house I have is like a TV screen. Like I have a laptop and I have my TV screen. And I got to like argue with my wife, you know, or let them cut the shop just for a second, you know, just so I can turn on the SSH and power it back up, or you know, set the IP address to something static so I know where it is. Just do an update and the update takes 4 minutes. So, DietPi, you don't have to worry about that. Basically, what we have the ability to do is not only pick the interfaces that we want to use when we turn it on. We can set the IP address, we can set the host name, the password, heap of configurables. You can actually set it to pre-install software that you boot. So you can, DietPi has this really great list. Well, let's finish with the DietPi software. So they have this awesome list of really useful software you can run on the Raspberry Pi, and each one of these bits of software has a number with it, and in the DietPi config, you can actually tell it, install these packages basically once you boot. And you can also tell it to run scripts, heaps of stuff to help you to get going on this. A great list of things, and I'll show you if you're going to use it. Okay, so my flash completed. So what I'm going to do now is close that. So at this point, you plug your SD card in, and once you plug it in, you'll see, you should see it come up with boot. Now, in boot, there's 2 files on here that are probably hard to do. But if you look on your SD card, you'll see DietPi.txt and you'll see DietPi.wifi.txt. So the first one we're going to configure is the DietPi.txt. So if you double click on that, you'll get this text file, and you can see all these configurables. That's basically what. So what you want to do is, if you're following along with me now on this, is you've got, I always change the keyboard layout to US because that's our standard that we use for most things, and I like to set the time zone to our local zone. So as is Australia / Sydney. This networking options is an important part. So you can see by default Ethernet is enabled, Wi-Fi is disabled. We're going to enable Wi-Fi by changing the Wi-Fi enable setting to 1 from 0. If you read this little bit of text up here, what it actually says is Wi-Fi will take priority. So you don't have to do anything, just set Wi-Fi to 1. This country code here, I like to change to AU. And this is where I find that makes life a bit easier. We're actually going to set static IP address on so we're all going to SSH into our Pi shortly. We want to go through the network, and we want to hit our specific device. So using the static flag here, change that from 0 to 1. And here, you just want to enter the number that's written on top of the file. So there's an IP address already, and so I'll put an IP address in each one so we don't clash. Yours is 10.0.0. Oh, sorry, I didn't. You're using your own one. Yes. Sticker. Okay. I'll build this one for you. So 10.0.0. Start money range for the rest of them. And just make sure to change this one underneath it, the gateway to 10.0.0. That's pretty much all you need to do there. So set your IP address up to static. Cool option here, host name, so you can change what your device is called, network. So I'll leave mine as DietPi, but feel free to change yours to whatever you feel. A couple of other configurables here that I don't usually tinker with too much. So, okay, this one's important. So the Autostart one, I'm a big fan of just getting it to log. Generally, when I'm playing with it for development purposes, I'm going to get it to log straight in as. So what this does is it allows you to set up when it starts, what happens. So you can get it to run the desktop and auto log in. Just run the desktop and wait for login. You can get it to run a bunch of these other software packages. You might want to run your code in your media center. I actually just want it to load the console, but I also want it to log in. So I'm going to change that to 7. Match that variable there. And I want to get it to log in as root. So I just want to log in as root. So I've got all the power as soon as it's on, getting start running with it. The only other really important one here is to either note or change this. So this is the global password. So when it logs in, when you have to put the SSH into it at the moment, you're going to have to enter a password. The global password here is DietPi or lowercase. I'm going to change that. I think it's a good idea to change it to set it to whatever you want. And you can have a tinker with some of these. Some other cool ones, like if you're going to use the Wi-Fi hotspot, you can figure them out of the box. So I can actually turn the Wi-Fi interface on your Raspberry Pi to an access point. This is really handy for when you play with the Pi in the field and you're running some software on it, showing the Wi-Fi access point. So you can be sitting next to it, connect to it over Wi-Fi, and then SSH into it that way. So it's a really handy way to access it. And it also bridges the Ethernet. So then if you go and connect Ethernet to internet, you actually get internet through the Pi's Wi-Fi. There are all the changes we need to make to sell it with. So just to recap, we need the keyboard ladder to US, we changed the time to Australia, Sydney, we enabled the Wi-Fi, changed our Wi-Fi country code to Australia, we set up a static IP address for this Raspberry Pi, and auto login, change the password. This is, if you're interested later on, you can do auto install software here. So list of available software for this list, and then you add a line for every package that basically you want to install. What I'm going to do with that. So we'll save that file, and then the only other thing we have to do is tell it exactly how to connect to our Wi-Fi. So for this, Blastfurnace is our SSID. There, yep, Blast_furnace. And the key is just Blastfurnace, no spaces, lowercase, correctly. Blastfurnace, yeah. So you can add a heap of them here. You could add your phone hotspot on top of that. You could add maybe your work network, basically anywhere you want to take the file. I think it just by default has 4 entries, but I believe you can be adding to this array. So we'll save that. So now we're ready to actually boot. So without a keyboard and monitor, we're going to be able to easily access this file. Fingers crossed. So first thing is take the SD card out now and plug it into your file. Cameron Owen. Now you're going to have to also connect the Blastfurnace router to obviously access it here. Sharp is second. So it is open up DietPi.txt, go SSD, go key. SSD, sorry. Yeah, so far, we've flashed the SD card, all I'm doing is turning we're not going to do too much hardware stuff, see much on the screen, but yeah, we've flashed the SD card with DietPi and set it up to connect to our network, the right settings, passwords. So, fingers crossed. So what we're going to do next is, if you haven't downloaded it already, so if you're on Windows, I recommend PuTTY. So if you go to putty.org in your web browser and just download PuTTY, you can use that to connect to the Pi. If you're on Mac or Linux, just jump on your terminal and I'll demonstrate how to connect both, connect to those Pi using both. Again, you're going to worry about this if you've got screens, that's good. Also make sure you're connected to the Blastfurnace network if you're in here. You can use 5G or the normal one, doesn't matter, lowercase Blastfurnace. So, one thing you can do just to confirm you can actually see your device is ping that static IP address you set up for. So you just go into your and I can reply. So it's on the network somewhere. So with PuTTY, you basically put in the you make sure you select SSH. You put in the IP address for your device. Port 22. That's about it. If you want, you can actually save that configuration.
Reddit asks, doesn't Windows have native SSH?
Does it now? Someone told me it does now.
Yeah.
I don't know. I use Windows on this subsystem, so.
Yeah.
I think it does. Oh, at least I'll talk about it. I didn't want to tell you that. So yeah, your IP address, port, and open. Now it'll ask you, do you trust this device? Yep. And ask you to log in. So once you're here, log in as, we're going to use the root user, so we've got root, and then the password is whatever password you set up for with the DietPi config. So we're going to set to SAPHI, and now I'm in. So now I'm in start or set up for my file. Now I'm not going to do this yet. I'm going to kill that connection because I'm also my preference is to use the subsystem links. Not that it makes any difference. And if you're doing it on Mac or Linux, you can just simply type SSH. We're going to use the root user, Matt, and then the IP address on the file. Same password. Okay, so you're going to be hit with this screen here. You should be able to go OK, and this will start doing some basic setup. This takes a couple of minutes or two. The Raspberry Pi is connected. Not only is it connected, it's largely configured Raspberry. Don't really use a preference what you want to do with this, opt in, opt out. I opt in. It's my town helping at community. Send survey data to DietPi guys. So you get asked, do you want to change the global password? Because we set it up in the file, you actually don't need to. Same thing when you you can keep it using the global password, so they both share the global password. Whatever you set in that file, it says DietPi here, you can change it or you can use it in a way. Set it if you want. But I'm not going to. Serial console, the text here pretty much sums it up. If you're unsure what it is, and disable it. Alright, so eventually we get to the DietPi software screen. Now, this happens on the setup. However, you can access this at any time once you've set up your DietPi by typing DietPi-software. But what you get access to is a lot of stuff with it. The DietPi config, so you can also access that later on by typing DietPi-config, and I'll take you through that. But the cool thing DietPi has, the big advantage is this, now we can actually keep software that we want to install on the DietPi and configure it for. So you actually go down to software optimizer, hit enter. Here's this great list of software that you'll just set up for you right out the box. You now can go to these websites and follow their install instructions. It's here, and it'll run scripts to set them up for you. So, like really cool stuff. Cody Media Center here. If you want to set it up as a media center for your house. Likewise, my personal favourite, Plex, down here at number 42. If you just want to basically have your own little version of Netflix running on your home, off your, dare I say, torrented hard drives.
42, meaning of life.
Spotify Connect. If you want to use your Raspberry Pi to cast music on your Spotify to your speakers, you can do it. BitTorrent download tools. So cloud backups. WordPress, so you can set up a WordPress server.
Whoa.
Cameron. Now, I might install this just because I want to. Wi-Fi hotspot. So, Wi-Fi hotspot, really, really useful one. We can't set it up right now purely because we're using the Wi-Fi to connect our device, but you can actually enable this one here. This will allow you to turn the Wi-Fi adapter on your Pi into an access point. Then you can just connect to the Pi at any time and SSH into it. Like I said, whether you're out in the field, no internet connection, you just need to get on the Pi and run some code, check some things. Definitely have a go at setting this up once or twice. Really easy, it installs everything, and I'll show you where basically it creates a screen where you can set the SSID for the access point, the password, the channel that it's running on. I'll keep 4. Yeah, heap of stuff. Remote.it, we're going to install that. We're not going to use the DietPi to install that one, but we are going to install Node, Red. You can actually set this up as a MQTT message broker. So if anyone's been into IT stuff, the MQTT is quite commonly used as a sort of IT device-to-device communication protocol. You need a broker for it. You can use DietPi to install a message broker on. Let's have a look. Yeah, Pi-hole. If you want to have a network-wide ad blocker for your home network, Pi-hole's there to set it straight up. VPNs, open source, home automation platforms. A lot of software here to get running straight out of the box. And the one I did want to install, just to show you something, is the MotionEye web interface and surveillance. So this is, you want to set your Pi up to be basically you can set up to be a security camera for your house, or you can set up the Pi to be a hub for a whole bunch of other security cameras in your house. You can use MotionEye, and it's really good at the whole. So you hit spacebar to select the software you want to install. That's pretty much the only software I'm going to install. I don't know what to install. I'm going to install anything but anything. Okay. It's got an additional list. Okay, and it says here, only really need to use this thing you actually require, like open SSH. That's the drop there SSH. For my personal list, or the reasons I usually come in, I want to build essentials, so I can compile C and Git. So I want to connect to GitHub, put some projects out, basically Git on that, a couple other things there. That's all I really care about. FFmpeg is useful for video stuff, but we're going to get that when we install MotionEye anyway. So I've hit spacebar to select those, tab to get to OK, enter. I don't generally change anything. So now I'm all happy with it. Enter on install. It says this is what we're going to install. Build essentials, Git client, MotionEye. You happy? Okay. Go. Hopefully this doesn't take 4 hours to do. While we're waiting for this, the next part, now that we've seen how we can very easily set up Pi, SSH access, headless, no TVs, keyboards required. I want to show you how you can SSH into this over the internet. So now you can plug this in at home, leave it running, no port forwarding, or jump on the Pi from somewhere else. This is, in my opinion, the best way to do it. It's using a service called remote.it, or I'm pretty sure it's it, not IT, but it will work. So you can just go to that remote.it, and you can do this on your phone or on your computer and just create an account by signing up. I have an account, so I'm going to sign in instead. But just while we're waiting for our software to install on the Raspberry Pi, we're going to set up our remote. And so basically the way this works is you add devices, it installs a daemon on the Raspberry Pi or a service that runs on boot, and you get to set up different methods of them communicating with the Pi through the internet, through their servers. And when I say different methods, I was talking about 4, direct SSH, HTTP, HTTPS, VPNs. There are a whole list of them. We're going to do the SSH one, and we're also going to do the HTTP one. And with the HTTP one, hopefully I can demonstrate how to connect to our own security system, basically through the internet. So here's a list of stuff I've got. I've got a couple of devices online here already. So my front door Pi and my smart home. So I've got 2 running devices in my house. One's running a security camera on the front door, and the other one's running Smart Home. Smart Home is actually a hub for the front security camera, so I can actually see, and as I add more security cameras that run through the motion package that I can actually then patch them through the Smart Home Raspberry Pi. So I should only need to connect to the Smart Home Raspberry Pi to see all. That's just a Raspberry Pi with a USB camera, the side note, but you can also use the Raspberry Pi camera that you buy for dedicated one. Okay, it's failing to fetch things. Google remote SSH, and you can install that into your VS Code IDE. VS Code is the IDE of choice for me for a number of different certainly for web development and developing the Raspberry Pi. And so what you get with it, so with VS Code, when you install the remote SSH extension, you get this little icon here for Remote Explorer. And what you can actually do is create SSH targets. So if we go add new, and this is just like your SSHing with Linux on Mac, Linux or Linux on Mac, sorry. SSH root IP address of that Pi. I'll save it into my standard config. So now if I go back in here, down here you'll see it's here, 10.0.0.189. Open a folder. Linux. Yes, I'm sure. And then global password. So what it does is it downloads the VS Code server on the Pi. Now, what we're going to get out of it is the VS Code window is going to appear, but the Project Explorer and the terminal are going to be what's running on the Raspberry Pi. So everything we do in the terminal will actually be the Raspberry Pi's terminal. Anything we view in the Explorer is actually going to be folders and files on the Pi itself. But we're developing on a desktop. So what it allows you to do very rapidly write and run code on the Raspberry Pi from the desktop. You don't have to developing, with a, I don't actually think you can get a good idea running on the Pi in the desktop environment. So you don't, this also means you don't have to sort of write code and then SSH it across and then look at the Raspberry Pi. Just trying to think about how I would write code and develop on the Raspberry Pi without this particular technology. So what's happening is this is also downloading something to the Raspberry Pi to VS Code. Generally, I need to do this once. I'm doing a lot of SSH around up here just to start with once I'm not rushing again. Typically very fast on Alright, so you got VS Code installed. Yeah. So you can do it from VS Code. You can go to the marketplace, the extensions, and just type SSH. and you get the very top one here, remote SSH. And then you click on that and just install mine says uninstall. Got it. Install that. That's cool. Yep, and then Remote Explorer up the top. So once you install it, you get the Remote Explorer icon just underneath the extensions icon. Then you just hit plus, add new, and then here you type.
So Kat, in 2 sentences, just go quickly what this is all about, because 2,000 people just started tuning in.
Okay, so just to update what we're doing. So basically, Programmer's Guide to Raspberry Pi. So what we've done so far is we've set up the Raspberry Pi with DietPi, which is a lightweight OS to run on the Raspberry Pi, and it comes with a whole bunch of optimized software to install out of the box. So we've flashed it using Ballerina Etcher. We've then used the DietPi config to set up the Pi to the correct IP address. We've SSH'd in via both PuTTY and Ubuntu. Yeah, it is Ubuntu, but the Windows subsystem for Linux. And basically install, gone through the DietPi and DietPi setup. So where we're up to now is just a quick demo of how to connect to the Pi using the SSH plugin with VS Code. So yeah, once you've gone to the Remote Explorer, add target, SSH, and then yeah, this is your root at, and then your IP address, your Pi. Then you just hit enter. So I've already done it, but that'll basically add it to your list. So you'll see it appear in this list. You won't have as many as me, so it should be like the only one there. And then once you see it there, you hit the little plus on the folder. It says connect to host in your window. And we get something like this, and the first time it has to download the VS Code server. And this is where I figure it gets stuck. The horrendous oh, look at that. Just as I was about to give up on it. Go. Go on. Connection. I think we're in. We're in. So that's what it looks like. So what we do is we do open folder. I just open the root directory, it hasn't got much in it. And so what we're seeing right now, really cool, this is over here, this is the root user's home directory on the Raspberry Pi. And if we open up a terminal window, guess what we get? It's the Raspberry Pi terminal. Now it's going to go through the setup again because I interrupted it before. But I'm not going to install it. But yeah, so this is a really nice way to develop my backend. Now just using all the VS Code features, great files. I get the ability to use Git, like the Git features of VS Code. So for software development, really handy. So if I actually inside a Git-based project directory right now, I get the branch, the ability to switch branches, push, pull. VS Code handles things like logging into third parties like GitHub. So if I log in, once with on the VS Code side of it, as I push and pull via the Raspberry Pi, they won't confirm the password usernames. don't even let it finish the setup. It's gonna want to do some stuff here. So this probably hands down as a program that's the most useful tool for writing code. If I'm with the DietPi, go open the wait for the server to complete. Show you a couple of commands. So once you finally set up DietPi, which any other day of the week is going to take about 10-15 minutes tops, you'll build with a screen like this that boots every terminal window. It gives you a list straight out of the box here of really useful commands. So DietPi launcher, all the DietPi programs in one place, so you can install via the DietPi config list, you can access for there. DietPi config, so this is where we set up network interfaces. I'll give you a demo of that one, which is really useful. DietPi-config, then DietPi. Now here you can configure all kinds of things. First we look at your network adapters, so Wi-Fi is finally connected. I can pick what I want to be static, DHCP, what I want to connect to. Gives me a bit of information about my signal strength and IP address at the top there. Turn on the Ethernet by I wish, or run for Ethernet. Get display options, rotations, up by camera, heap of stuff. Basically anything you can do with the Pi. Turn on your I2C or serial if you start playing with the I/O pins and get talking to sensors. Tom sync mode actually. Running the server. Yes, that's it. That's it. So the DietPi config, yeah, with the basic Pi setup stuff. The DietPi software is where you get for the CPU, but they've got a default 1500. The temperature I find super useful. I've got it's passively and actively cooled, but the fan's not running at the moment in this Pi. But even passively cooled, it's keeping it a nice 37. You pretty much ideally would like to keep it in the 40s. Once you start getting up over 65, you probably the Pi is going to be working. I think it starts thermal throttling at 80 degrees or something like that. So while
lastly, I want to try and get this in, see if internet connection permits. I want to set it up with remote Pi so we can SSH to this thing anywhere in the world. So you've signed up to remote IT, and you'll get to some screen like this when you log in. Yours will probably be empty. If you signed up tonight, it definitely will be empty. All you have to do is hit Add Device, Raspberry Pi. Instructions are here. It's App Install Remote IT. I've got a couple of choices here. I could use the SSH window that I've got open in VS Code, or I could use the one up in Linux. I'll stay in VS Code for now. App Install Remote IT. Let's see how we go.
Just very briefly, what do you use remote IT for and the Pi? How does that work together?
So what you use remote IT or remote it, I'm not 100% sure how to say it, but effectively it's a service that allows you to create a whole bunch of different types of tunnels through the internet to your Raspberry Pi. So if you want to SSH into your Raspberry Pi over the internet without port forwarding, you use remote IT. So it runs sort of a daemon that forwards the data through their servers to you via their web interfaces, or not even their web interfaces, sorry, and I'll show you in a second, but you basically use your standard SSH tools, whether it be PuTTY or your terminal window, and you get given a address and a port, punch it in, and you can connect to your Raspberry Pi, just like it was on your own network. You can also set up services to forward HTTP, HTTPS data. I'll show you actually when I configure it in a second. So it's installing reasonably quickly, and I didn't expect this one to take too long because it's pretty lightweight. And it's going to appear here as a device in a second.
So this website, remote IT, that allows us to flash the Pi, or is it just more showing?
No, it allows us to connect to it through the internet. So remote, it's like, think of it sort of like TeamViewer, but for command line.
Oh, I see. Yeah.
So when it installs remote IT, that if you followed that, you should get to this point, and it says these are all the different ways that now we can set up remote IT over this network. I'm going to use the last one, which just uses the IP address. So basically copy that website, go into your web browser, pick a tab, and what we're going to get is the remote IT setup screen. Here is where you want to put in the username and password that you set up when you created your remote IT account. So what this is going to do is, because this website here that we're looking at is being served from the Pi locally, what we're going to do is, what it's doing now is linking this device to my remote IT account. I'm just going to call it Blastfurnace Pi. Register. All right, so it's added that to my account successfully. So if I actually go back to this account now and refresh this, there it is, Blastfurnace Pi. But it hasn't got any services. If we go connect, there's no services for it. So the only thing you got to do is add some. We're going to add, and look at them, these are all the services you can add. The one we really care about right now is SSH. We'll leave it on port 22, and I'm just going to call it SSH. I'm going to name this service SSH. So add this guy. I'll add this, and we'll basically see if we can do this at the end, time permitting. HTTP, if you want to forward a website that you're serving on the Raspberry Pi to the internet. So you hit HTTP and pick your port. I'm going to call this one Security Cam. And the Motion Pi and the Motion Pi software, the Motion Pi documentation will tell you this, but it actually serves its web interface on port 8765. just something I remember, but you can set up multiple HTTP. You can have a whole bunch of different websites being served on this Pi through a whole bunch of different ports, and you can set up a tunnel to each one here. Okay, so we've set that one up, and now we're done for now. So if we actually go back to our DietPi account, we'll see Blastfurnace Pi is here. It's green, which means it's connected. Now if we hit the down arrow connect, our two services appear. So if we actually go SSH, spins around, connecting, and it generates basically an address and a port for us to SSH into this Pi through the internet. Conveniently, out of the box, it gives us one for root. So literally, all we have to do is copy this address, just like we're SSHing before. So I'll do it through the Ubuntu one, and all we have to do is copy that in, literally like that. Connect, yes. My password to log in to my Raspberry Pi. We are now SSH into the Pi, but through the internet. So we could do this, literally anywhere, and do everything on the Pi that we would if we were connected to it on our local network. Let's log out of that. If you were using PuTTY, it would probably look something more like this. Our host name. And our port is going to be 39238. Yes. And we can log in as root. And our password, same. So effectively where I've gotten to right now is we know how to set up lightweight Pi OS, and we can connect to it through the internet. We've also covered how to click the wrong button there. We've also covered how to connect to it SSH through VS Code, which allows us to develop on the Pi really easy, write and run code. So the only other thing I might tempt fate with one more time, because it should be reasonably quick because we've had a crack at it before. DietPi software. So for anyone that's just jumped online, this is how you install some of the optimized software for DietPi. Software optimized. I'm going to go back down to my security camera. Okay. Install. Okay. Let's see how we go. So while that's doing that, what I will show you is a case of one I prepared earlier. So what I actually have here is my smart home, and I have a few different ones. I have a web interface for control, and I have one for my security. So my security, if I click on that, what happens is with the HTTP window, it'll run the connection and it'll actually launch the web page straight in your browser. So what you're seeing here is this website is actually being served on the Pi. Spin around, and effectively what we've got here is now a live stream of the front door of my house, and we can actually jump on here. I get it to store both the movies and the pictures. So if I want to jump in and just sort of see what's happened throughout the day and motion that it's picked up throughout the day, you can see here's Me and the family arriving home this afternoon. So it's saved a frame of that. So yeah, the Motion Eye software, another a really cool way to use a Raspberry Pi. Another one I like to put in my toolkit. You can basically set up cameras and heaps of configurations in this. For free security software, it's excellent. You can set up so the camera itself, what video res you want to be viewing it at, frame rate, a whole bunch of configurables there. But the important things are file storage. I was actually going to get to this. How to mount a USB on boot. So I've got a 256 gigabyte USB stick plugged into this Raspberry Pi, and I've set up Motion to store all the video and images to it. So you can see I've only hit 10% of it. And what I can also do is, with my movies, tell it how often I want it to clear out the bin. So I only preserve the movies for a week. I like to think that if there's something I need to, if I need that security footage for any reason, I generally know about it within a week. Like, you're going to know, typically, if your house has been broken into, you're going to find out inside a week, unless you've gone on holidays or something. Generally, I'm coming home and one of the neighbors is saying someone stole something from the front lawn. Did your camera catch it, or something like that? They're usually a day turnaround. So I don't really see much reason right now to store stuff for more than a week. It stores videos when Motion's triggered, and I can set up the exact file name there, format. Motion detection. So you can actually set up things like the frame change threshold, light switch detection. So if you've got a room where the light turns on and off, you can actually configure it so it doesn't save them as motion events. I'm not sure from a security perspective how that works if your intruder flicks on a torch or something, but the motion gap, so the time between motion being triggered and the next recording. A mask, so the mask is areas of the frame that you don't want it to fire motion from. So typically used with trees in the image. If you have a look at mine, it's hard to tell because it's running at night time, but I basically have blacked out the bushes and the gap that looks through to my neighbor's entry. So I don't actually want it to record footage when my people are coming to my neighbor's place. So it's literally just capturing, it's only going to trigger videos when people are coming to my front door. For those of you that, a bit more into the web dev stuff, this is kind of cool. You can get it to talk to email services, call a webhook. So you can actually set up a webhook. So if you set up some APIs or whatever, you can have it sending text messages and all kinds of things, doing all kinds of stuff. For more hardcore Linux, if you're into your bash scripts, you can get it to run a command or a bash script when motion is detected and when motion's finished. Working schedule, days you want it running, times and stuff like that. So it's really sorted out. Video streaming. So basically, this turns whatever video device you have plugged into your Pi into an IP network cam on your network, and it tells you how it's streaming it. You can have a snapshot URL, which means every time you hit that URL, you get the frame that's coming from the video at the time you hit the URL, an embed URL. So you can actually put it onto a web page. So you can set the port, frame rate, quality, overlay. Nothing super interesting. Mine's got the camera name and the timestamp. So yeah, sort of harping on a bit here about Motion iOS, but it's a really cool bit of security software. And so I have this one set up. My smart home device is my hub. So if you go back here, the device that the video is actually being processed and saved to is my front door Pi. And so the hub, when you add a camera, you go add camera, you can actually select remote motion eye camera. So that will pick up any motion devices that you've set up as cameras on your network. And so as I add more, this will be the central place I go to view all the video streams, but the individual Pis are the ones that will be responsible for doing the processing of the motion detection and the storing of the respective videos and images. This one here is running on 4, but I've successfully run it on Pi 3 as well. Haven't tested it any less than that, but yeah, Raspberry Pi 3 and 4 doesn't seem to have any issue with it. Haven't checked the temperature of this one. It's sitting in one of those FLIR cases with the CPU attached to the outer chassis, and it's in the garage, so in the winter at least it's been staying pretty cool. What I have plugged into them is IP rated waterproof USB cams. So I've literally got them. They actually have a real nice professional look about them. They come in this nice steel case. They're like like spheres. They move around inside like a ball socket joint. And yeah, these big ass USB cable. It's pretty long, like maybe 5 or 6 meters of USB cable they come with, and it just routes all the way back to the Pi. With this particular setup, I am taking the load power requirements off the Pi a little bit by running them all off a powered USB hub. But I have tested it. You can, and the power requirement for the camera comes from the fact that it has infrared. So at night time, the infrared lights turn on, starts drawing some current through it. But I have tested just running the camera on a Pi by itself, and it did have enough grunt. At least the Raspberry Pi 4 had enough grunt at the USB ports to run 1. I tried running 2, and that's where it fell over. But I didn't expect it to be honest. I was surprised it ran 1 at night time. In the daytime, no problem, not heaps of power, but at night time, once it's pumping the IR lamp, it starts drawing a bit more power. But yeah, you can do it with 1. You can also do it with the Raspberry Pi cameras. The disadvantage with that for me, or the reason I didn't want to go down that route, is I didn't want the Pi with the camera. So I didn't want someone to be able to just go up and like smash the Pi off the wall. They'd have the SD card, like literally everything. So basically I have this USB camera mounted, and then the cable runs inside the house all the way to the Pi where it's a bit more secure. Yeah, I think that's pretty much it. Look, I think this will, yep, installation completed. So this is going to finish now. Literally the only thing this is going to, the only bits of the puzzle that this is going to put together for us is you'll be able to see that we can remote straight into this and set it up over the internet. But so I guess I've already sort of demoed that working here. Yeah, like I said on this, the only other one I had was smart home control. So I have a Angular app on there that gets served up through a specific port, and I have it patched through to the control service on this Pi, and that Angular app controls relays that are hooked into this particular Raspberry Pi. Tell it like it controls the transceivers on a bunch of wireless relays that I've got hooked onto lights, garage doors, things like that. But I find myself more and more replacing all that. Whilst it was fun and you know, a good way to sort of flex your technical muscles to get it all running, at the end of the day, buying some cheap stuff that hooks into Google Assistant is so much more efficient. I've got a bunch of light switches and stuff that I custom, you know, I went and wired them into the house and got them all working, and then I'm just like, oh, I'll replace that one with, you know, just a standard Wi-Fi switch from Bunnings, and at least that way I can use Google Assistant. My microphone. It's okay. So if you actually get through the whole process, you actually eventually get to this window, and you can hit OK, and it'll reboot the Pi. The SSH connection will drop here. VS Code, I hope it doesn't make a liar out of me here, but VS Code is pretty good at handling the reconnect. So it doesn't reconnect automatically, but generally speaking, it throws up a window like this. If you hit reload window, once you know your Pi's back online, you'll be good to go. And I think that might mean it's already back. No, not yet. I'll wait for it. Give it another second. Another way, because we set up our remote IT service, all right, so it's back. And so like I said before, we've got that security cam link. We installed Motion iOS. I'd already patched through a HTTP service to the port, which I knew it was running on, but that's 8765 for the Motion iOS. And fingers crossed we get our Motion iOS that we just installed on that Blastfurnace Raspberry Pi. Not going to have any cameras or anything, obviously, because we haven't got any plugged into it, but this is what you would get on your first install. Admin, no password to log in. And it'll say no cameras, set up cameras. And off you go. So this is where you can then add a camera. You can pick the top one for USB cameras, network cameras if you've got IP cameras. I think that one's the Raspberry Pi, the local MMAL camera. Or if you've got another Motion or iOS device running in the house. So yeah, literally the only thing we didn't get to, and there's a great link for it, which I'll share, is mounting external storage on boot. It's very, very straightforward, and that's in my toolkit of stuff. That's pretty much the last really useful thing that I'd probably want people to know about is you want to be able to boot for all kinds of different reasons, logging in that with a USB plugged in. VS Code, we reload window, Linux, type in the password again, and it will open up straight back to that directory that was last open on the Pi and start the terminal window for us.